So, hello everybody. I'm Raphaël from Creation, and in this talk, I will explain you. I will introduce you to a new tool to work with XML, and especially when you have to work with very complex XML, like it's very suitable for electronic invoicing, or also for UBL, Unified Business Language, who has that has a very complete schemas. So every time you have a complete, very big schemas and very advanced XML dialect, you can think about this tool. Just a short word about me and Accretion. I'm Raphaël. I'm the founder of Accretion back to 2009. And now Accretion is quite a big company with around 20 people, 5 in Brazil and 15 in France. So we started in Brazil, São Paulo, but we had lots of trainees from France, and then they started also a venture in France. And today they are bigger than us. But what else? You can reach me, for instance, on Twitter. Yeah, I'm a software engineer from France, 10 years in Brazil now. I'm an OCA member since the beginning. In fact, I was quite involved in the creation of the OCA before the OCA was created, right? Because we were an Odoo Gold partner, and we thought it was very important to create the OCA. And I'm also a PSC of the Brazilian localization. And okay, so let's continue the talk. This is a picture to show you there are several levels you can work with XML and Odoo. And most people see only the first level at the top. And we will see the others level in this talk. Okay, so first you can think when you work with XML. So what you generally want to do is to import XML documents like electronic invoice or UBL invoice or that kind of things, and you want to import them. Turn it into Odoo records like your Odoo invoice or stuff like that. And you have a next level that, well, first, so generally people, they write the code by hand to generate the XML or to import it. And in many situations, it's okay, but not all. We'll give a good example. A next step, the second step would be to use a data binding tool to be able to generate Python data structures from the XML and back from a Python data structure. You would be able to serialize it as an XML. It's also known as marshalling and unmarshalling. So we will present a tool that's called generate GS, generate data structure DS. Okay, so this is the second level. The third level is going further than that, and instead of generating only Python data structure, you can generate Odoo model mixins. Okay, so that the next level, you will directly generate the Odoo classes and the fields and all directly related to the XML grammar. And okay, so it makes many things automated. And finally, I will present the module that enables you to inject there's generated Odoo mixins into real Odoo models. Like you can inject them inside a real account invoice, or now account move, or res partner, or the real Odoo object. And it will map smoothly, because when you have you generate fields that are you have relation like one-to-many or many-to-one relations. So obviously, if you change the target model where you will inject the field, there are a few there are little magic to do. Okay. And I will also in this talk I will also give examples with a bit with UBL, Unified Business Language, and also with the Brazilian localization, which is really an example of how things can get complex with XML. Okay, so first about the first level, the handwritten XML parsers and generator. Okay, what everybody does. So generally, the most common use case for that is electronic invoicing. And what happens is that in some country, in fact, probably in most countries, you can do electronic invoicing. You don't need the tool I'm presenting here. So for instance, we are, Accretion is leading the electronic invoicing both in Brazil and in France. So in France is my colleague, my co-worker and associate, Alexis Delattre, who is leading that with Factor X, that kind of stuff. And in fact, we talked quite a bit about all that. And like, so generally, XML grammars or XML documents, they are ruled by schema files, okay, the XSD files, okay. So that they are also called a grammar, right? At the time of HTML, you have something called DTD, but the schema XSD is something really more powerful. So it's also verbose, but it's powerful to control the data structure and ensure that the document you are sending and you are receiving, they are valid, they have the right structure. And so when you talk about electronic invoicing, generally there is a lot of validation happening inside this XSD file. So like in France, for electronic invoicing, and in fact in all Europe, I believe, you have 500 lines XSD file, schema file, rolling it. While, for instance, so in fact, in France, because Odoo already have lots of invoice fields. Inside Odoo, you have fields, for instance, for the name of the partner, for the address of the partner, for the VAT number of the partner, for the quantity of the product line, the price. Okay, you already have quite a lot of Odoo fields. Of course, you will put that inside your electronic invoice. And in fact, in France and many other European countries, you just need to add like 10 or 15 fields, fiscal fields, and you need to add them inside the electronic invoice. It's the electronic invoice, and also parse it eventually. But it's not a lot of work. Because the tax in Europe, it's not so complex. So at the end of the day, it's totally this way of working in many European countries with electronic invoicing. It's okay. You can do it manually. You don't really need the tool I'm presenting for electronic invoice in Europe, right? But in other countries, you need it. And you may need it in other situations like UBL. So in the OCA, at the moment, there is another project which is called OCA /EDI, and it's also mostly led by Alexis Dolatre, and it works with UBL, but the support is partial. So I wouldn't redo it entirely just for the fun, but I suggest looking at this tool because if it were to be rewritten or if it were to be extended a lot, supporting much more use case, let's say you want to support like call for tenders for suppliers or things like that with UBL, it's probably interesting to do that. Instead of doing it from scratch manually, you could use that tool. So just to show you what it means, an electronic invoice. I will end up screening it. So now I'm showing my browser. It should be quick. I'm just looking the file. Sorry about that. Okay, I will copy the file again. I will just give you an example so you see what I'm talking about. So, sorry about that. The computer is a bit slow. So, here, this one. No, not at all. Sorry. I will just show you a file so you can see really how it looks. And that one, sorry, I couldn't have a better link. Okay, it's bad. Okay, sorry about that. Let's try a last thing. What is wrong with that? Okay, I will show one. So you see my screen, I assume, with some Brazilian electronic invoice, for instance. And yes. Just checking, I have no feedback from you. Please tell me in a way or another if you don't see my screen properly. Just checking because I have no feedback from you guys. So I hope it's working normally.
Yes, is it good?
Yeah, this is working. Yes. Okay, fine. Thank you, Jordi. So this is a Brazilian electronic invoice, for instance. So, for instance, here you would have the partner. Here you would have the company, and here you have the shipping address, and here you have the detail with several lines, invoice line, if you like. So you have information about the product, like the barcode. Then you have a very crazy tax system. You have like 6 different tags with a lot of different values. It's totally crazy here in Brazil. You don't think about that, but it's well known to be a country where it's the most complex in the world. In fact, the tax system in Brazil. So here you have lots of details about stacks, and then you have another product. So you see, it's quite complex, right? And also, if we look at the schema, I will just be scrolling in the screen just to give you an idea. So this is the schema, and I'm just scrolling randomly inside the schema. It's 8,000 lines of all the kind of details. So, for instance, if you are selling drugs, or if you are selling gas, or if you are selling firearms, or if you are selling, I don't know, like, crop, everything is different, and you have lots of details, and okay. So anyway, so you understand it's really complex. It's just like, for instance, UBL, right? So you cannot really do it by hand. In fact, some tried, and that's really because of that I made this tool like 3 years ago. I started working on that because it was really not sustainable, because I have the experience of working both in France and in Brazil with Odoo. So I see how we are effective in France with a project, and in Brazil we are lagging like nearly 10 years later because of this fiscal stuff. And you know, the electronic invoice in Brazil, it has been in production for more than 10 years now. It's really mandatory. It's you should send the invoice in SOAP. So you cannot. It's really important. And okay, let's back to the slide then. And okay, yeah. And so in Brazil, there were projects to do that by hand. And look at that. You had like 32,000 lines of Python. Okay, 32,000 lines. And you had nearly no test at all. Right? So that was a crazy project. The kind of thing I mean, the people from the OCA, they would never do something like that, right? And we had to use it before the tool I made. And but it was really, I mean, we used it the less possible, just to do the final step to send the electronic invoice. But we knew this was really the weak spot of all the localization. And for instance, to give you an idea, when we have maintenance on version 8, it's like half the cost of the maintenance is all related to fixing the stuff, because the schemas, they are updated like once or twice a year. And every time it's updated, you have hundreds of lines that change manually. So it's really, really crazy to use that. And you also, because it's all manual, you have no idea what is exact coverage of you know, this lib has been around for, I don't know, like nearly 10 years, and used by few people. And so when there is an update, a new electronic invoice version, the main author is updating it. It was, because now it's abandoned. And you have also what's called a track factor about that. I mean, if the guy is sick or something like that, nobody will be able to maintain. And then after 10 years, you have absolutely no idea if some kind of fiscal feature, if it's working or not, because there is no test. It has been updated partially for 10 years. So, I mean, it's really not sustainable. And worse than that, it was already a small Python lib. But in fact, we accepted somebody else in the PSC of the localization. And the guys, they didn't really spot the problem with the lib. And they started building on the top of that. So, in fact, the guy who has been writing this lib, he was even hired. I mean, it's totally crazy. And they created a full data model on top of this handwritten code. And even Odoo OCA, they understood that it wasn't right what this guy was doing. So instead of, despite who accepted the guy in the OCA PSC, they started Odoo OCA, they starting supporting an alternative localization done a fork from another company who did something really simple. But in fact, they did it wrong also because they did it so simple that he wouldn't do the job for any companies that is going to invest something in open source. Like all the companies you guys from the OCA are working with, that there are companies of a certain size already, because the small companies they use open source when it's ready and they don't pay for it, right? So you have to support a bit the big guys, otherwise you will have no money to fund your localization. So the other guys, so we were in we were between two extremes. You have something extremely complex, impossible to maintain, and it's something extremely simple that was more like a toy. And even Odoo OCA, they broke with this guy again. And at the end of the day, the aftermath is that well, lots of companies they lost a lot of money, Odoo partners and their customers who tried these localizations that were abandoned. Or okay, so it's really it has been something really important for us, right? Okay. Alternatively, you could seek could I use a QWeb template instead of creating strings of chunks of XMLs with Pythons? Couldn't I simply use a QWeb template to generate XML? It sounds like. And yes, in fact, in many situations, you can use a QWeb template. It's really fine. For instance, like in France, in fact, Odoo OCA, they have some UBL support now on version 14, and it's done with QWeb. So as long as you have a very partial UBL implementation, maybe you can do it like that. But the problem with a QWeb template is that sometimes the schema is really so complete that you cannot do that, because you will still have a manual solution. So you will still support only a subset. Unless your schema is really simple, you will still support only a subset, and you will not be able to know exactly what you are supporting or not. Other point, the QWeb, when you create a QWeb template, you won't validate your data. So how do you validate the data? Probably you will check the XML against the XSD. You use a normal XSD validation. But if you do that, you will catch the error, the user error way too late. So for instance, I give you an example. You try to send an electronic invoice or call for tender or something like that, and some users they made a mistake when typing the VAT number of the partner or the fiscal property of the product or something like that, and it generates an error. But the guy, maybe he has written the data like 1 week before or 1 month before. And that's another guy that will try to send the electronic invoice or the call for tender. And if you have an error, it's too late to catch the error. So with the solution I'm presenting, you can catch the error when it's important. It makes it easier for you to validate the data right when the model is being completed by the user even inside the Odoo view directly. Okay, so it's interesting when you have lots of validation. When you do it manually, the QWeb template, you will still need to do manually the mapping. You will take the Odoo field and turn them into QWeb template. And okay, for the export, you will have to do that. But if you want to import XML, you also have to do that. So for importing, people, what they use E3 and XPath matching, or eventually they can use Objectify. Okay, so a QWeb template, it works. in many situations, but it doesn't work in all situations. Okay, like for Brazil, it's not. And the example I gave of the guy who did a really simple toy localization, they used a QWeb template, for instance. It's not lots of companies that they have been using that. They are calling us because it's really partial how it works, right? And even Odoo says they are broken now. If it were good, they would have taken the market, right? So so now we'll talk about the tool Generate.js. So Generate.js, it's what we call generally an XSD data binding solution. And this kind of solution, it's a bit, if you think about advanced XML solution for SOAP or for data binding, in fact, lots of, it was done at the end of the 90s. And the company who invested on that, it was Sun Microsystem with Java, and also later Microsoft with .NET, right? When they pushed their new Java and .NET stack, it was packaged with some very advanced libraries for enterprise, like Java Enterprise and this kind of stuff. And a big feature of the stack, it was the XML support and the data binding support, right? So for instance, like all modern ERP in Brazil, they all use Java data binding, that kind of stuff, right? And it was only very late we had that in Python, in fact, okay? So what it does is that it will parse, it will look inside the XSD schemas, and it will create Python structures that will be able to transform an XML document into a Python data structure, okay, with a little class and a field and things like that. And it can it can also do that the other way, and serialize the Python object back to an XML document. So where is it used, the Generate.js? It's used, there is a Django official plugin, so people, they use XML dialect to make Django models. They do it for SQL Alchemy. They do it, there are neural networks project, computer management, greenhousing construction, structural biological annotation. So in fact, in every field where you have advanced XML dialects, then it can be used. Okay.
Raphaël, I think we have just a mention. The session would end at this time. In 5 minutes, we have the intro to the Brazilian localization. So
I'm late. Okay.
Yeah. Just
I'm quite late, guys.
Okay.
So we selected Generate.js over another tool. I will not enter in detail. What you can do, you can install it with pip, and then once you install it, what you do is you take as an input your XSD file, like UBL invoice XSD, or like a Brazilian electronic invoice XSD, and then it will generate the Python file, okay? And you can test it. To test it, it's easy if you import XML and serialize them again, and you check it's the same as the input. So next, what we can do is generate Odoo mixins. So what is it able to do? So the idea is that the Odoo class, the Python class now, they are able to write Odoo code, to write Odoo mixins and their fields. I won't enter the details. So, for instance, in XSD schema, you have two kinds of types. You have the simple types, like this. There's the chunk of XML, and so, for instance, you have two values possible, and then this is turned into, in Odoo, this will be turned into a field selection. So on the right, you will find the field selection, and on the left you will find the definition of the constant. And on the right, you have how it's written a complex type. So a complex type is changed into an Odoo model mixin. So you can see it's an abstract model, okay, with all the fields you will take from the XSD. UBL example. So if you take the UBL, you would have, if you click on the link, you will find like nearly 800 classes from all kind of business from UBL, a UBL invoice, not entering into the detail. It's the same, it's just much bigger than what I've shown. And if I look at, so let's look at a file now. A file from the Brazilian localization. Where is it? Whoa. It's slow. It's slow. So in fact, the code that it generated, it's really perfect. So here is an example from the Brazilian localization. So you can see all the constants that will be used, those simple types, they will be used later in field selection. So if I look the kind of fiscal framework from the guys, I will look for it, and then I will find a field selection with that, with a proper string, a label, even a help. Okay, and then if you have you also, so for instance, this is what will be injected inside the REST company, that guy. Okay, so you have all kind of if it's a company, if it's a person, if you have all the stuff, and you have a relation field. So for instance, many to one, one to many. Generally, you don't have many to many. Okay, but you can see it's really complete. It's compliant to the Pipe 8 OCA check, right? So it's really, you wouldn't do anything better doing it manually. And you have lots of class, right? So in fact, it's really, if you maintain that manually, it's a lot of code to maintain. And if there are updates like twice a year, okay? And then you can test it also when you generate just this data structure. You can still import an XML, an example XML, and test it. Okay, and then a final step of the framework, just finishing, is when you use this module, spec-driven model. So it's a framework module that is doing some magic, so you can inject the models, the abstract model I've just shown, because I've said, oh, this will go inside the REST partner, this will go inside the REST company. But obviously, when you have this kind of sorry, okay. Okay, let it go. You understand when you have a relational field and you inject an abstract mixin inside some real Odoo object, then the field, the co-model will need to change, right? When you do that. So what it does is that it overrides the build model from Odoo models, and it's able, so when you will say, I'm injecting this abstract model inside some Odoo object, then it's able to properly remap the fields from that were generated with the XSD. So there are two kinds of models. There is a spec model, which is a generic one, and you have the stacked spec model. In fact, it's because in XML, generally speaking, the XML models, they are much more deeply nested than the Odoo models. The reason is that because being way more nested, it enables you to do more check that you would do in a different way inside Odoo. But in XML, you don't have much choice with the XSD, so they do deeply nested models. And this allows you to denormalize the XML models inside simpler Odoo, flatter Odoo objects. So for instance, when you have an electronic invoice, you have the invoice lines, you have lots of much more things injected inside only these two Odoo models. Also, you have a hook. So once you injected, you have a framework a bit like Inherit, who allows you to inject some abstract generated models inside a concrete Odoo model, like you will inside the REST partner, the invoice. And after the module is loaded, it will take every model that is still abstract and it will make it concrete with a table. So there is a hook to do that. And the reason is because, for instance, if you have 200 Odoo mixins that has been generated, when you have a one-to-many relation with one of these mixins and it's not an existing Odoo object, when you will open like the pop-up in the view, you will need. So, for instance, in Brazil for the invoice, you have data about who are the users or the partners that are allowed to visualize an electronic invoice when it's published in the fiscal portal, for instance. So it's not existing nowhere in Odoo. So what it does is that it creates the Odoo, the model, it turns it concrete. So then it's able to, it works, right? You also have auto import that is totally automatic. You take the XML, it transforms that into an Odoo model. You have the export also totally automatic. It was that feature of the export. It was contributed by another company. It's called CME. In fact, that's the company who started with PySped and then changed its mind. And you also have automatic views with all that. And so, for instance, if you look at the big map of the Brazilian localization, you have all these Python libraries that are the first level, just the Python libraries that don't depend on Odoo but are generated with generate.js. You have all the Odoo abstract mixing that have been generated. So the second level I was talking about, well, the next level, so the Odoo abstract mixing, but with no intelligence, not injected into specific Odoo existing specific models. And then you have Brazilian fiscal apps like electronic invoice for product, electronic invoice for service invoice, and you have all kind of fiscal documents in Brazil. It's totally crazy. And what it does every time is that it uses the pure Python marshalling library. It uses the Odoo model, and it also uses the fiscal intelligence of the Brazil, right? It's another module. And if we look in 1 sec how it's done, if I go there, just showing you when I said the models, the abstract models are injected into concrete objects. This is, for instance, this is the Brazilian invoice, and this is the Brazilian invoice line. And here you can see all the XML nested structure that has been wrapped inside. And same thing for the lines. You see it's extremely complete. And for instance, here you see one-to-many relations. Here you have a many-to-one relation with these symbols. So for instance, this is the carrier. You have the information about the carrier. You have the fiscal information about the carrier. You have lots of stuff. And when you inject that, then you are able to import all this data, these records, they all have been imported from XML. And so you see them. And then you have the automated views. All these views are the fiscal stuff you would need. I mean, not every company has to fill all these fields, of course not. But some companies have to fill them. And you see it's all generating inside the invoice line, okay? In the invoice line. Well, it can be improved. I said it's better in the view. And, well, I don't know if, I think we can stop here. Otherwise, I would have shown how it's injected inside the concrete model, maybe in just 1 minute. If you look at invoice, oh, sorry, it's not that one. If you look at invoice, you see that we inherit. So it's a bit complex. So you need to inherit from either a stacked model, or you can inherit from a model also. Here or sorry, you can inherit from the spec model. And when you inherit, you say also the Python module where is the pure Python lib, and then you do the mapping. So the mapping you do it the Odoo way. You say if the field is related, you know, the XSD field is related with an Odoo field, or you have some inverse, some compute field, or if I take another, maybe race company or race partner, I'm not sure which one. Yeah. So here you have the mapping, you have a compute field or inverse field, and this is where you make the relation. So this is an override. This is a field that has been defined by the abstract mixin, okay? And we here inherit from the spec model who do the mapping, and we override it to say, oh, there is a mapping, so it will work both for import and export. And then this is a mapping function when it's not simply a related field, because very often it's just a related field. And once you do that, you have all the import and the export, it's all working, right? So of course you can have some intelligence, but okay. You can ask me a question if you like. It's done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are quite late, and the other talk is Luis Felipe and Renato.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
That's my associate, by the way. We are aware of that. Okay.
Are you?
Good luck.
Okay.
Good luck. So you catch me on the Discord if you have questions, and I will improve the slides and publish. So sorry for being late.
No problem. Okay.